Okay. Hey everyone, this is Rafa. This is our standing delegate call for ZK Sync. Today we're going to be covering a couple of different topics. Just to go through, we're going to be talking about the Security Council proposal for a budget extension for the next 2 months. I'll provide some context and some information with regards to that. I'll be sharing a brief skim of a new cap minter modifier called a rate limiter, which will be in deployment over the next couple of weeks, hopefully sooner, hopefully this week, that will allow us to create token programs with rate limits on token disbursements. I'll talk a little bit about the tokenomics proposal roadmap overview. So thinking about what the Tokenomics post from Omar means in terms of practical points and some conversations that have been happening with the foundation and other ZK Sync partners. And then talk a little bit about what the upcoming protocol upgrades will look like over the next couple of months. Okay, so with regards to the Security Council proposal, I'm just going to go ahead and link it here. So let me also present it. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Yep. Okay. So the Security Council bridge funding proposal is asking for roughly 11 million ZK. Originally, the Security Council, like the Guardians themselves and other entities of the ZK Sync ecosystem, was bootstrapped by the foundation. However, given the current what's happened in the market and such, we do need a bit of a bridge funding for a Security Council, so the Security Council can continue kind of like ticking along for the next couple months. Now, one thing that's important to note is that this is limited to kind of like 2 months of funding, because the Security Council is undergoing kind of a review in terms of costs and composition for the second year. So there will be a revised Security Council funding request being put forward likely in August that will talk through the Security Council structure and then the costing for 2025 to 2026, which is the second calendar year for the ZK Sync governance system. I'll pause here in case there's any questions. Okay, so if you do have any questions, feel free to DM me on Telegram. Most importantly, you can just like reply to the forum post. This will be an active discussion for the next couple days, and then we'll move on to an on-chain vote, I'd imagine by the end of this week or start of next week. The second item is minter mods. So if you've been following along, there has been ongoing development with kind of the cap minter, and kind of, I mean, it takes quite a bit of time to flesh out the entire kind of like minter mod system. So let me just open this. Here we go. So a couple
Rafa, sorry for interrupting. I have a question. This is only for 2 months, right?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Why is this big amount?
So when the Security Council was designed last summer, the Security Council had basically 4 out of the 12 seats on 15-minute SLAs, which are very expensive. So these 15-minute SLAs are basically that if anything goes wrong in the ZK Sync ecosystem, we have 4 different Security Council members that cover like from different geographies that can respond within 15 minutes and be able to like activate and coordinate like a freeze, a soft freeze or a hard freeze. Now,
So this is amounting to 4 members of the team, right?
it's not 4 member, it's 4 different organizations. So it's I believe it's like Open Zeppelin, Nethermind.
Okay.
I can't remember the other 2, but it's in the bylaws. The details are in the bylaws. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's 4. And these and so what we found actually over the last year is that this is a bit like in practice, it's a bit over-engineered. Given the current security model that ZK Sync has in general, it doesn't, there's also security councils for it, like each of like Abstract has their own security council. So this fragmentation of security, it just doesn't work the same way. Like and we think these higher costs with regards to 15-minute SLA are not really necessary for the security of the ecosystem in practice.
Okay, I'm just worried that this is a big amount of money, and previous funding came from the foundation, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Now,
So
now
there's-
it goes to token treasury, right?
I'm sorry?
Now it goes to the token treasury, right?
That's
So
right.
token treasury in the future will be bearing the costs without.
And
So
that's
that
why,
shows that the decentralization really doesn't have any. It doesn't grow, right? It doesn't do anything.
well, the main thing that's kind of happening, right, is that that's the reason why this is only 2 months, which is because before a budget is presented to the token assembly, that budget should be like in line with actually what's necessary for the ZK Sync overall. And there's kind of like a broad acknowledgement that in discussion with the Security Council that right now that the composition and kind of like the tiers that exist aren't necessary at that level of detail that we were protecting the ZK Sync protocol last year.
Do we have anywhere? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm asking so many questions, but this is quite shift towards something very quite shift towards something that actually is going to impact the community. And do we have any context or like on performance of these 4 organizations, like in a matter of results, like to justify this or?
I can actually that's a good question. I can ask Alicia to post kind of what the interventions and what the participation has been. At a high level, the Security Council has been active in the technical review and approval of every protocol upgrade which has been executed. So that's so there's been 12 zips, 9 unique ones, as well as I believe 2 or 3 emergency actions. I think we've had 2 emergency actions since last year that have needed to take place, as well as I believe a couple of rehearsals that have taken place. Alicia can outline those, but the Security Council has fulfilled its duties in terms of both technical review and safeguarding the ecosystem. They've completed the work that they had been assigned, yes.
Was there an alternative to this in consideration?
There were a lot of different alternatives, but this was the one that was chosen, right? You can't launch a governance system with like 2 different security councils. You have to choose like which security council you want to launch with. So this was the one that
No, I mean, but in a sense of funding, like bridge funding is expected to be a bit leaner than rather than full-time funding, then that's a full-time job, right? Was there a consideration from, I don't know, I'm just boasting now, emergency only
Yeah.
compensation, result-based compensation, or whatever. This seems like a full-time
It
funding
is
of,
a full-time kind of participation type of thing. So
but
I
these
mean,
organizations are also ZK token holders, right?
correct. Yeah.
And they're full-time funded for.
I mean, they have dedicated resources, especially the 15-minute SLA ones have dedicated resources to ZK Sync.
Okay, just doesn't really ring as it's, yeah.
It was very conservative on the risk management side last year. And you can't, so the contracts are legally binding, and like you can't just unilaterally like remove a security council member, because you do want security council member sovereignty. So the legal contracts are very strict to ensure the security and accountability of each of the participants. That's why the bridge funding is kind of the option that's on the table, until we can hopefully um, uh, put forth a restructuring and a recommendation for what the Security Council will look like in the second year.
Okay, and why the price is stuck to 0.04? I mean, this is also like the token is not stable, right? So it can be, I don't know, price range within 13 days, like something in the middle that makes sense. Why it's like the token can just sink and they still get to 0.04? It's not the token price is rising.
Well, there's two protections for this. One is the Security Council contracts are denominated in USD, so they're a fixed USD price. So it doesn't really matter how many tokens this like cap minter receives. The payouts to the Security Council are like fixed in USD based on the 30-day average, I believe, of the date of payment in ZK, right? They receive ZK. Excess tokens are returned to the token time lock, to the token governor time lock. So there is no world in which there are quote unquote excess tokens like reserved for the Security Council.
Okay, and the last question for the proposal sponsor, are there candidates? Is someone supporting this, or is just
So
open now?
So right now it's open because the Security Council needs to find who the sponsor will be. I'm assuming they're working on that now.
Can the sponsor be someone from the Security Council?
Mm, if they
Technically,
recommended
yes,
that,
right?
if they recommended that, I would probably recommend against it. I would recommend that the sponsor be someone outside of the Security Council.
Yeah. And that will be a kind of clash of interest, right?
Yeah, I mean, technically there's nothing on chain that prevents it, because at the end of the day, this doesn't get approved without the token assembly voting. So, it doesn't really matter too much who sponsors it, because at the end of the day, the token assembly is the one that votes. But that being said, I think, culturally, it's probably simply preferable that they find an independent party to support them.
Yeah. Sorry, but it has a question in the chat.
Nope.
I'm done.
Sure. So the reason why we're passing, where we've like posted, the Security Council has posted this on the forum, is because they believe now is the right time to begin this conversation about the costing for the Security Council. And there is an option for the foundation to continue funding this for the 2 remaining months. If someone asks me, I think it's more important to show these costs for the first year, and then have the token assembly both be aware of these costs. And also, we do need to start transitioning some of the costs to the token assembly for long-term sustainability. that's like it's been a year, so this is like normal. You got a bootstrapping. They received an initial grant. That grant has run out. They've used it to pay for the Security Council today. Yeah, I mean, in general, it's very important to note that the token assembly has, multiple responsibilities. One is ensuring that the protocol upgrades are in line with the economic interests, right, and the support of everybody who participates in CK Sync. And the other is to create a credibly neutral like system and bodies. So I think something that will happen over the next couple months is the different bodies, the Security Council, the Guardians. Um, I'm personally working on trying to untangle what governance infrastructure should be covered by the token assembly. But that means that the accountability of each of these bodies is now also with the token assembly. Right now, the accountability, right, since the token assembly has not been voting on these specific allocations, it's not as direct. So hopefully this will increase the level of direct accountability between each of the bodies and the token assembly themselves. Okay, so we have, I wanna show something else. So let me just go here and go to here. So I've been creating this presentation, and I think this visual is kind of cool because we talk about the overall Minter mod framework and what we're moving towards. And you can think about it as a 2x2 grid. You've got like on the x-axis, you have off-chain processes and on-chain processes. And on the y-axis, you have asset management, so like the exact token, the minted token, versus rights management, which is like minter rights. And what we're kind of thinking about is how do we move more into role mechanics, not just specific council multisigs or not just specific legal contracts, and also slightly different than streams or vesting. And this is kind of where the cap minter framework comes to play. Let me show. Oh, where is preview? Let me see if this works. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
So this is a quick skim. Where we're going to be talking about, I'll skip here. This is all sorted, but let me see here. Okay, so the contract that we're going to be publishing is called the rate limiter version 1, which is kind of like a modifier, an extension of the cap minter that can throttle the rate at which minting can be streamed from the cap minter. So this controls token distribution through rate limiting. What this means is you, instead of minting all the tokens at once, future contracts, you'll be able to hook up a rate limiter that limits the minting operations. So you can say, oh, you can only mint 10 ZK tokens a month or 100 ZK tokens a month. And this is quite cool. So this is a new contract which is coming into play. For those who are more technically inclined, let me see if I can find, give me a quick second so I can find the code. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. I can't find it right now. Um, so I'll share it in another one. But we have the audit which has been complete. We'll be posting on the forum hopefully soon with regards to that. And yeah, the idea is that we can now like create restrictions in terms of how much ZK mints can occur on an arbitrary per period basis. So it could be monthly, it could be weekly, it could be daily. This is kind of hard work that it takes it quite a bit to untangle as we create these like different Lego blocks. There'll be another modifier that we're working on, which will allow for delays. So say like someone can request to mint tokens, but then you have to wait 7 days to be able to like execute the mint. And this will also create a new type of kind of like restriction, which is time-based instead of rate-based. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about is the tokenomics proposal. If you haven't seen the tokenomics proposal, well, it's not a proposal; it's more of a vision that's been posted on the forum. I think it's worthwhile to take a look at it and to understand it a little bit better. Let me just share my screen here. So there's a couple different features here that I think are important to note. Some is usage-driven revenue. So the sequencer producing revenue and these fees automatically collected in the protocol and then via gateway in the shared bridge contracts. And then creating programmatic distribution. So allocated through potentially a burn function that manages supply, or staking rewards to support decentralization liveness with the governance in charge of all these parameters. So in other words, you're going to have a fee and you're going to have a fee switch with different parameters that token governance would have control over. Now, all of this won't come at once. There's a couple different proposals which are being discussed, some of which are protocol upgrades and some which are token programs. So one of the protocol upgrades which is coming up is hopefully the permissionless staking with proof of governance. So this hopefully will look like anyone can stake their ZK tokens, but to get a reward, you can only get rewards if you're delegating that token voting power and that delegate participates in governance. So that's one of the proposals which are in discussion right now. The second proposal is upgrading the token contract with a public burn mechanism. So that's also coming in, and that introduces kind of a permissionless burn process. Then there's going to be enabling the sequencer and interoperability fee switches. And then finally, a proposal to finalize the allocation rules, potentially turning on the fee distribution at some point. So I think for these first three proposals, it seems like likely they're in discussion to happen in the next 3 to 6 months, or sooner. We'll see how fast the team moves. And then the final one will still take a bit of time because it kind of depends on a lot of token assembly conversation around how the fees are gathered, if the fees are distributed, or if they're sent to the token assembly, to the token time lock or burned or whatnot. So each of these stages, it's kind of like building up in terms of new utility and incentive alignment with the ZK token. Any questions with regards to the rate limiter or the tokenomics?
Yeah, I need to read a bit.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of information, so um, it I think it's important to bring it up and make sure that everybody knows that these conversations are happening. Okay. Um, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about is just to add in uh, to the information from today is what's happening with regards to protocol development. So if we think about these as three different like components, so we've talked about um, governance bodies and overall like protocol sustainability. The second is Zknomics or tokenomics and all the different proposals related to that. And then the third one has to do with kind of like protocol upgrades, which are not really related to tokenomics. So just protocol upgrades themselves in the protocol roadmap for zk Sync. I added a tweet from Anthony. This tweet is a little bit from a little while ago, but summarized, in my opinion, really well back in May, what's actually going on. So let me just share my screen. Okay. So version 28 precompiles. So Gateway is I believe live. I think it's already been executed. Yes, zip 10 and zip 11 have been executed. So this means that now we have like cheaper proof verification. We have a proof aggregation layer across the board and optimized precompiles. Is making transactions more cost efficient across the board. Now, in parallel to this, I think you guys also saw the Airbender announcement, but if you haven't, I'd definitely encourage you guys to read about the new proof system, which is coming down the line. So this is a little bit further down, but it's important to take that into consideration. So what's coming up immediately next? So now we want interop, and there's the first version of interop will be enabled, which allows cross-chain message verification. Not asset transfers yet, but cross-chain message verification. And more optimizations around possible block times so that we can support fast finality. And then in version 30, it's basically the second version of interop, which is still it's still being scoped, but it's in development and aiming for end of August, I believe, which includes asset transfers for interoperability, as well as support for Pectra. So it's what's happening from the protocol development update. Any questions with regards to this? Okay, great. I think with that, we'll wrap up the call. I know this was a lot of information to kind of digest, and I think the next meeting will be in 2 weeks. If you have questions, feel free to DM me. As I mentioned before, we're really coming up on the 1 year mark from we've already passed the 1 year mark from when TGE happened, and we're coming up on the 1 year mark for the governance launch. So there's going to be quite a bit of transition now as we really lean into proper decentralization, and we're coming out of this initial bootstrapping phase. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, guys. We'll chat later on.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.